Hey, y'all, it's Phil Madeira from Nashville, Tennessee, and you are watching Between the Sheets. One more time. Okay. Hey, it's Phil Madeira, and just saying hello, and you're listening to Between the Songs.
Welcome to Between the Songs, the podcast. My name is Chris Marchand, one of the hosts, and I'm here with my friend Joe Cook. Welcome, everybody. Today, we are pleased to be able to share with you an interview we just did with multi-instrumentalist, songwriter Phil Madeira, Nashville legend, you might say. He's played with everybody in Nashville over the course of many decades, including Rich Mullins, and he's on the Brother Keepers album, and he toured with Mullins for a time. And we're pleased to be able to have him on here today as a guest because his band, the Red Dirt Boys, is recording they have a new album, and they're doing an Indiegogo campaign, which is like a Kickstarter, a crowdfunding campaign. And they are in the midst of doing it. They're wrapping it up. It's actually been backed, but they are we wanted to send more love their way and hopefully get them a little bit more support in the final days of their campaign. So that's the Red Dirt Boys, and they're basically Emmylou Harris's touring band. And we had Phil on the podcast, and we just let him go for an hour, didn't we, Joe?
Yeah, it was great. He's an interesting guy. He's very unfiltered. I think he speaks his mind. I think people are going to really enjoy what he has to say, whether they agree, disagree. I think they will. They'll definitely be intrigued.
When you've been around long enough, like Phil Madeira has, then you can just kind of say what you want. You know. He's been through it all.
He's earned that right.
He's earned that right. Now, for me, what's interesting about this is, growing up, we're in our late 30s, or are you in your? You're not in your.
I hit the big 4-0 recently. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm almost there, but you grow up and you listen to these albums. And you're like, you become a fan. You read these liner notes, and this one guy's name just keeps popping up. And I honestly don't remember when I first understood that he existed as an artist. It might have been Steve Taylor. It might have been Amy Grant. Not really sure. But for me, his first big claim to fame is showing up in Steve Taylor videos, and he's also in a Newsboys movie, which is pretty goofy and funny to me. And I think I slightly irritated him by asking him a question about that.
What was his character's name again?
It is Hack the Clown. That's correct. Hack the Clown. He plays a washed up clown that takes over the Newsboys and helps them because the Newsboys, I believe, they're gifted a circus, and they're put in charge of a circus. Yeah.
I don't know how I never saw this movie.
Yeah.
This is just so bizarre.
I like to call it the Spinal Tap of contemporary Christian music. That's what I like to call it. Thank you, Steve Taylor, for bringing us that. But here's the thing about Phil Madeira, though. If you go to his website, philmadeira.net, just go to his store page. Look at all that he's done. Actually, his website's really cool because it has a great bio about his life. You get to hear kind of the flavor of his career, of his artistry. But he has just so many amazing albums. I know, Joe, you've listened to a few yourself. And so it's worth checking out. Also, just as a reminder, go to what you're gonna if you want to support his Indiegogo, at least look at it. They have a great video of their songs. Kind of, they are an Americana sound, the simplest way to describe it. But if you search for Emmylou Harris's band Red Dirt Boys double record, and that's on Indiegogo. There you go. You can find it. Joe, what else do we have on the podcast today? It's not just Phil. We're offering a little bit more of an extra.
Okay, so last week we did our tribute to Rick Elias. It's been 2 years since Rick Elias passed away, and we've been wanting to celebrate his life and his music. And really, just first, I want to say a very big thank you to everybody who contributed to that. We had, I think it was 23 of Rick's friends and collaborators who just jumped at the chance to be a part of that. on today's podcast, we are going to be sharing kind of an extended bit from last week's. So one of the things that was just absolutely awesome was, we reached out. Of course, we reached out to a couple of Rick's friends. I reached out to Jimmy Abegg and also Ben Pearson, and had no idea they were going to do this. The two of them got together and they just rolled tape and just had a conversation about Rick, just sharing memories and stories and reflecting on Rick's final days. And it really is quite moving and really actually a really powerful moment in our tribute to Rick. And so I first want to encourage people, if they haven't heard that, go listen to that episode, because I don't want any spoilers in today's, because that's a really important part of last week's show. But we had to edit quite a bit of that down. I think it was about 12 minutes long, Jimmy and Ben's segment. They sent me over 20 minutes. And so, we had to chop quite a bit out of that, including a pretty great story of the Rags going to a restaurant in New York City that, it's a pretty fun story. But we just, for time purposes, we had to take that out. We're going to present today, after Phil Madeira's interview, stick around, and we're going to have an extended version of Jimmy and Ben's conversation. And we're pretty thrilled to bring that to you.
So that's our episode today. Quick reminder that in the upcoming months, we're going to be focusing on Rick Elias's music, going through his albums and talking about his songs. This is going to be more of a fan podcast at the moment, and hopefully you enjoy that. We want to introduce you all, if you're not familiar, to Rick's music, and to just take you through a kind of a survey through his work and his career. But today we have an extra with Jimmy Abegg and Ben Pearson. But now we're going to hear from Phil Madeira, his life and career. So I do have a question for you, Phil, and this is a question that I actually feel bad asking about because it's kind of absurd, but I grew up being a fan of the Newsboys movie Down, Under the Big Top. And I knew the whole time, I'm like, oh, that's that guy, Phil Madeira. He's a clown in this movie? And also, I love Steve Taylor, and so I know that you were in his video, Smug, and I guess Christian music is so bizarre. Like we have this little bizarre subculture, but you played this interesting part in my life, and you played a comedy role in this dumb little movie that Steve Taylor made, and I guess. I don't even have a question other than to say what was that like, and what's your story about that film, and what can you share about that absurd little moment in your own life?
Well, I mean, it's obviously not a significant moment in terms of my work or any of that,
Oh, that breaks my heart. I can't believe that.
But Steve is. Steve, he remains a friend of mine, great friend, actually. The only thing I'll say about that, and of course, the Newsboys are also, particularly Peter Furler. I'm still in touch with Peter. I think you're aware of this. I've been done with Christian music for many years. I have very little interest. I'm always happy to answer a question, but it's also, I don't see it as, it was someplace I wound up for a while. Steve asking me to be in that movie was fun, and actually. I guess I can act a little bit, but what was funny was going to see the premiere, because there was a movie theater in Cool Springs, which is no longer there, down in near Franklin, Tennessee. And so that's where they had the premiere. And I took my kids, one of whom was, I don't know, do you know what year that came out or not?
Like 90, 96, 97.
Okay.
Like
so,
yeah.
So, my oldest kid was, I think it might have been earlier than that, but anyway, 90, let's say my oldest daughter was, I think was 5 and my youngest was 3. And we're sitting there watching this, and my daughter, Kate, who turned 31 yesterday, looks up at me as I'm on this gigantic screen. She's like, "Dad, are you a movie star?" And I just said, "No, honey, I'm a rock star." But
that's right.
But yeah, but that was, that was a long time ago. But I'm glad you enjoyed it. I wish it were more readily available, because I'm sure my kids would. Well, the one my child that actually does smoke a little weed, which I have, I don't condemn that. I wish it were. I'm sure she'd enjoy watching it that way. I'm sure it'd be probably even more enjoyable that way. But anyway.
Yeah, I think maybe the takeaway for me is just something simple, which is you made me laugh,
Good.
As a kid, as a teenage kid, I'm just like, this is funny. I enjoy this movie, And
I'm glad to hear it.
That's my takeaway.
Sure.
Well, plus every rock star has to take a stab at acting at some point.
There you go.
That's right.
There you go.
That's right. That's right.
Thanks for indulging me, Phil.
My pleasure, man. Yeah.
I'm good. I probably need to head out, but I'm good to go. And thanks for your time. I'll let you guys take over from here, and blessings to you.
You too, Chris. God bless. Cheers.
First off, before we get into the new project and everything, thank you so much for, for being a part of our episode last week, for celebrating Rick Elias. And man, that was, there are not a lot of things in this world that give me hope anymore. But man, your story, Rick's story, that was beautiful. That gave me hope.
Yeah, it's a pretty remarkable, it's, the intersection of my loss of someone to cancer, followed by Rick, almost exactly a year later, wanting me to share his cancer journey with him, was super redemptive, and I had actually been writing a book about the journey. I threw it out. I just thought, well, it's such a horrible story. And if I can't find redemption for the main players in a story, it's like, not sure it's helpful to tell. But Rick, the adventure with Rick was pretty amazing, because we really, we didn't talk for 7 or 8 years, and I didn't even know who he was when I was at this event. It was actually a Sammy Horner show in a friend's backyard, and I looked over and I saw this big lug. Just looked like one of these guys that you would have seen at Cornerstone Festival. Just a big fan. Just a large guy with Bermuda shorts and a ball cap. Did not look like a rock star. I didn't even know who it was. And then that guy comes up to me and says, well, I actually probably can't tell you what he said because it was profane, or maybe more obscene, but he was like, sorry, Philly, I'm a blank, and I'm like, it took me to hear his voice before I knew who he was. He had changed so radically, but, and thus began that journey. So yeah, I'm grateful. I actually heard from Linda the day you guys broadcast that thing. Rick's wife, Linda, sent me a message just how much the story of Rick and me meant to her, And of course, she and I were always golden. She's a good person, and she anything about Rick that was going on, good, bad, indifferent, she knew it, So.
Oh, well, I love hearing that. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I was at that concert 2019, the Rick's benefit. What was that like for you being up on that stage that night?
Well, it was really, the band that I play with, Red Dirt Boys, and, we've toured with Emmylou Harris for, 12 or 13 years. So we are a very tight, precise, although albeit loose. The music we play is loose, but we're dialed into each other. We know how to work together. So that is the paradigm that I operate under when I record, when I perform. I'm playing with Brian Owings, Chris Donahue, Will Kimbrough, and it's going to be good. So to all of a sudden be tossed into a situation playing music that I didn't know, although I played all over that record, with a band that hasn't played the music since it was recorded, with a singer who is not even sure if he's mentally going to be there. I mean, and you may remember that I was actually the band leader of that thing. Rick had returned, which was remarkable that he would ask me to do it. But it was a lot of pressure, a lot of not really, a lot of, what's the word? Just, it was driving blind in a lot of ways because we didn't know if Rick could remember the lyrics, which he didn't. I think we had one day of rehearsal, maybe two, I can't remember. The funny thing is, Joe, I didn't really think that record was, as great as the plan was and as much fun as it is to record music. I wasn't a fan of the record. I wasn't really a fan of a lot of Rich's work. I was more of a fan of Rich. I liked his journey. Rich, I don't know if I said Rich or Rick, but I'm talking about Rich Mullins. I found him intriguing. He was iconoclastic. He was a dichotomy. He was a very conflicted individual. But playing those songs that night, my favorite one was, ironically, Michael W. Smith performed one of those tunes, and it was the songiest of the songs. It was the most sensible in terms of how it was structured. It just felt like a song that, I don't know, Michael McDonald had written or something. But the other songs, I don't know. I think I'm taking way too, I should have just said it was great.
That's the oldest, by the way, that's the oldest song on the record. I think Rich wrote that in like 1974.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So well, you're really dialed in. Yeah. So I emotionally was not attached to to the music. Although so many of the parts on that record, I'd forgotten that I'm just all over that record. I'm playing lap steel, I'm playing organ, I'm playing guitar, I'm playing baritone guitar, I'm playing accordion. It's kind of my life as a session player, almost magnified on that record. But to do it live there was just a lot of pressure on that gig. How did you like the gig? I'd be more interested in knowing because I just was, yeah, there was a lot of pressure.
So yeah, I come at it from a just totally different perspective, in that it was probably one of the most moving concerts of my life, and
wow.
I say that full well knowing that was it Rick Elias's greatest performance? No, I saw Rick when he was a rock star, and and when he carried the stage like a rock star, and and when I remember seeing him it was like over 20 years ago, and the rest of the band leaving the stage, and it's just him and Man of No Reputation by himself, and then the juxtapose that with that night where he's relying on Mark Robertson just to get through that song. But there was, I don't know, to me there was something so beautiful about just that aspect of these brothers, this band of brothers rallying together and keeping it going. And to me, my favorite performance of the night was I don't know, it's hard to say, but you did not have a home. Just watching how Rick kind of pulled it together on that one, and man, they that to me felt like, well, this is like the last true performance of a ragamuffin band, and with just the sharing vocals between Jimmy, Mark, and Rick. And he struggled a little bit, but not too much on that one. And I thought, well, that was just a nice moment. And a friend of mine that was sitting next to me told me afterwards, he goes, I was rooting for him the whole time.
Yeah, I think everyone was. Joe, I think what was really fantastic about that night was Rick's. I mean, Rick was completely exposed. There was no pretense of being a rock star.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew Rick well enough to sort of recognize the sheen of, who you can pretend you are when you're thin and you've got rock star hair and you're allowed to swagger. And honestly, Rick, interestingly enough, Rick was not at his best when he had money, and probably not at his best, when he was living the dream. He was really honestly, he was at his best when he was dying, because his vision was clear on what was going on. And maybe perhaps this is what can be said of most of us. Money for me has never been, I don't know. It's never been why I do anything. When Rick had his taste, Rick really changed. When he had that thing you do, he immediately bought a Mercedes. I remember him saying, man, just got to sit in the car. Come here. You got to sit in the car. I mean, this is, I don't know what year, 90 something. So I get in the car and the Frank Sinatra song is playing. I got the world on a string, and it was like, and that's, he went from living comfortably in a modest home, a really nice modest home, to all of a sudden feeling like, oh, okay, I can buy the big McMansion now. And he was, it was just really, he bought into that dream, and then that dream immediately turned on him because, when I had my first huge cut with Garth Brooks, I thought, well, this is it. Here I go. This is how it is always going to be. Every quarter I'm going to make, $90,000 or something. I just thought, well, here we go. But It doesn't often work that way. But fortunately for me, now I don't know what happened to that 90,000, but it didn't change me. But I had a much different upbringing than Rick had. I had a super stable upbringing by humble parents who, my father was a minister, and they were people that, they gave their money. They didn't have much, but they gave it all away. So I had a different ethic about this. I knew that money didn't make me, and I think Rick had a much more difficult childhood than me. And I think those things, the idea of this security coming his way, I just, it was jackpot time for him. So he made some decisions that ultimately hurt him. And then, of course, the music business did not, wasn't friendly to him in the long run. He became a realtor. But I think, so even the ragamuffin idea was almost, it was funny to watch, because Jimmy, in truth, was the real ragamuffin there in terms of mindset. But all I can, I'm going down some path I don't even know that I'm on. All I will say is to wrap up about that evening of honoring Rick and of supporting Rick. The only thing I felt was wrong, and I knew it was Rick's insecurity. Rick wanting to do the Jesus record was really Rick saying, I don't think anybody's going to show up if it's an evening of my music. So, but I think if we do an evening of Rich Mullins music, people will be there. And I think he was wrong about that. But I had a friend who came who didn't know who Rich was, who didn't know what Christian music was, and she was completely confused. But those of us who knew, well, all this is, essentially that night was beautiful when Rick fell apart, when Rick finally just said, I don't have anything left, and he turned it over to Mark. That to me was the most redemptive thing, because Rick was a type A, I'm in control guy. You could see it in the way he walked, in his manner, in his command of anything he was doing. And on that night, he had command of nothing. And it was gorgeous. And, there's pictures of me weeping up there, trying to play and crying. I remember Smitty and I, when Rick was falling apart, I caught Michael W.'s eye, and we were both just wiping our tears away. So that was what made that night happen. You could have played, the soundtrack from, I don't know, a Huckleberry Hound show. It wouldn't have made any difference.
Yeah.
It was really about what was going on.
Well, in last week's episode, you had mentioned being on tour with Mullins in '94, and you said that was when you first started playing the accordion, and that was what ultimately led to your gig with Emmylou Harris, which is, that's a pretty big deal. That's pretty huge. How did that come about? How did you end up with Emmylou?
Well, I played with Buddy Miller for quite a number of years. I was on many, I would say, 8 out of 10 Buddy or Julie records that you look at the credits on, I'm probably playing on those records, the organ, accordion, and lap steel on one of them. But so Emmy was aware of me in large part from working with Buddy, and that's how I actually got to know her just a little bit. We did some, she was at some shows of ours, but she heard me playing accordion with Buddy through the years. And then I wound up, before she invited me to be in her band, I wound up playing on her record called All I Intended to Be, which is a beautiful, very folky record, probably from 2007. Maybe it came out in 2008. I can't remember.
Time, go easy on me tonight, 'cause I'm one of the lost sheep. Take what you must, take what you must of what I've lost as I am, and let the moon follow me home.
But anyhow, so me seeing accordion in a junk shop in Wheaton, Illinois, and thinking, it can't be that hard, and it'll probably, I mean, I didn't realize how fundamental it would actually be for the Rich tour. I'm sure I played a lot of it on there, and then to play it with Emmy, I mean, that led from me, the trajectory was me thinking, who would ever want to play an accordion, to maybe I should be open to this, to, now I'm playing with Emmylou Harris, to Hohner accordions giving me a $5,000 instrument.
Wow.
So my mantra is generally yes, unless there's some moral complication. My mantra is going to be yes.
Wow. So this new project, so tell us a little bit about that, because there's 2 records involved in this, and that one of them is brand new, and then another one was recorded 2 years ago. That was the first Red Dirt Boys band project, right?
Right. What's going on, Joe, is that first of all, I do have my brand new record, Hornet's Nest, is on Bandcamp as a download, and I need to put the CDs and LPs up there. I just haven't had time to do that. So there is a brand new record, solo record, 2021 record of mine up there. Although I guess yeah, that's the newest from me as a soloist. And of course, Red Dirt Boys drummer and bass player play with me as well. Then when we're a quartet with Will Kimbrough, we are Red Dirt Boys. When we play with Emmylou Harrison or Red Dirt Boys, we also have a fiddler, Eamon McLaughlin. But when I was asked to do a Mark Hurd retrospective with Americana artists. So of course, I don't know, 2015, 16, 17. And so I would hire the guys, and, you know, like, let's say Rodney Crowell was going to come in and play. Well, I have to hire the studio for the day. Rodney's going to take 3 hours tops. And now I've got another, 7 hours left. And so I just said, hey, why don't we just start recording, Will, bring your songs, Phil, bring your songs. Will and I wrote some songs. Chris Donahue contributed to that. And so basically on the heels of the Mark Hurd project, which was executive produced, meaning paid for, by a fellow named Jeff Grantham, we made that first record. And we put out a very limited edition when we did the Cayamo songwriter cruise in 2018, I think. Maybe it was 19. So, we pressed up 300. And then for a while, we had it on Bandcamp for free. And then this past November, we had the opportunity to go to Blackbird Studio and record there at a just insanely low price. Blackbird is probably, one of, I would say, the two best studios that I like to work at in town. And so we spent 2 days in the studio this fall. We recorded 10 more songs. And so there's basically 21 songs between these two albums. The packaging is going to include lyrics, a little lyric book. When I make a record, even though, it's so limited how many people are actually going to buy a physical record, but I feel like they deserve a decent, the CD should open up. You should be able to pull a CD out of one side, a lyric book out of the other. That's, when you buy my records, that's what you get. And at least since Providence. And then, and we have vinyl as well. And so we've got less than a week left on our Indiegogo, which is, I guess unless you can provide a link, which I'm sure you can, it's, if you Google Red Dirt Boys, Indiegogo.com, you're going to find that record. But time is, by the time anybody's watching this, there's probably going to be very little time left. But we're funded, but we obviously want more funding. And I think fans will love these records. They've got Emmylou on both records. There's always going to be some kind of thread just because of where my head's at. And honestly, all of us are spiritual guys in one way or the other. But like, there's a song on the first record called All Saints Day. There's another song called Religion, which Will and I wrote, the first line of which is, how can you say you've got religion when you've got no soul to save? It's a great line, intensely. Yeah.
How can you say you got religion, you got no soul to save? Greed and pride and avarice, from your birth into your grave. To the poor you've been a master, to greed you've been a slave. How can you say you've got religion, you got no soul to save?
It's really if you're a religious person, why are you willing to send your kid to war? Why are you a gun nut? Why are you, I mean, I won't go too far down the rabbit hole, but it's all the questions that I have for people who share my faith. Why are you not worried about people who are hungry, you know? And it's funky. It's real good. It's great music. So
I listened to some of the first record. It's great. That Religion, that one really stood out to me. It was great lyrics.
Thank you.
All Saints Day, another great song. Now you've got a couple stretch goals, right?
We've got a stretch goal. Yeah. That if we hit 20,000, which at this point, I don't even know if that's likely, but if we hit 20,000, I think what we're going to do, and we may increase we may increase the benefit if we hit 20. I don't know. But the initial thing is that everyone will get a download of the 21 songs in their original work tape format. I think a lot of people love to have a version of a song, like let's say, what would be a good one that might have changed? Even All Saints Day, me just sitting at my piano, out of tune, playing what will become a song that Emmylou's singing on, and that's well performed. So I think that is what we offered initially. If we hit 25, I think I was going to send everybody an extra CD or download of Mercyland Volume 1, or something like that, but I can't even remember, just because we're not going to, we're probably not going to hit. I'd love to say we're going to hit these goals, but if we hit 20 in the next 2 days or something, then I'll go for the big stretch goal. But right now, I don't even know if it's worth talking about.
Well, you heard them, people. So what was Emmylou's response to, you guys deciding to do this, make a record?
Oh, fantastic. Emmylou, I've got to say, is, you hear these nightmare stories about different artists that are difficult to work with. Or some of us have even been at performances of people and just thought, oh my gosh, I hope this is just a bad night. I hope this person's not always like this. But Emmylou is one of the most consistently good people I know. I think of her as kind of like my cool older sister, although I don't feel like she's that much older. I mean, she's 5 years older than I am. But yeah, she's like your cool older sister. And she's become a good friend over the last dozen years. But when I went to her, because I'm the guy, I'm not the guy that goes to management to negotiate money, or I'm not that guy. But I am the guy that will go to Emmy and say, hey, will you sing on this? So I went to her and I said, hey, Red Dirt Boys, or I just said, hey, Chris and Brian and Will and I are going to make a record. And we'd like to call it Red Dirt Boys just because it makes sense. But I said, I want to get your blessing. I want to make sure that you're okay with this. And she said, only if I can sing on it. And it was kind of like, well, okay. So she's on All Saints Day, and then she's on a song on the new record called The Real Deal, which is also the name of the new record. Yeah. So, I mean, I've just, I don't know how long we'll keep playing. And so we haven't done much in the last year at all. We have a very sketchy schedule coming up. So it's not work that my life does not depend on Emmy or anyone. I mean, you cannot be a musician and just think, like, if you're in Garth Brooks' band, you make a real mistake if you think, well, this is it. This will carry me through forever, and you have to really take a day at a time. But I love playing with her. I'm not sitting there wishing it would end by any means. It's good. It's good stuff.
Well, that leads me to another question, because I mean, this I know this last year it's been tough for everybody, but especially for musicians. How has that impact been on you? Just from a musical sense, is there, are you finding more work from home studio or?
Yeah, I have a home recording. Thank you for asking. I've got a home recording situation. And today, after you and I speak, I will go into my studio and I will overdubs on a guy's record who is living in Dubai. Yesterday, I played on a record of a guy that lives in Orcas, Washington. So I do a couple of sessions, another guy in LA yesterday as well. So I do sessions for people, like, even if there's someone out there who's like, hey, would you play piano on something, who's just happens to be listening to this? So absolutely. Now that hasn't been a living, but it's put food on the table. And then creatively, it's been an amazing year. I'm going to kickstart a record. I'm still waiting for vinyl to come in, by the way, on my Hornet's Nest Kickstarter. So as soon as that comes in, then I'm done. And then I think in August or September, I will kickstart a record that I actually recorded last week. So creatively, I'm on cloud nine. I'm the most prolific that I've ever, the last, I would say 5 years, I guess, since summer 2016, when I started writing my Providence record. I've been more prolific than ever. And, I have been sustained by mercy. And I have wound up writing, the next record is all love songs, because if you listen to my music, there's always going to be an edge. There's always going to be, even Providence, which is a love letter to where I grew up. It has its real moments of snarkiness, and Open Heart, which is kind of a love song thing, is really it's more about loss than you would realize on the surface. And then there's a jazz record as well. But then there's Hornet's Nest. Hornet's Nest is like pulls no punches. It is about betrayal. It's about death. It's about loss. And it is about redemption, but you've got to sit through 9 songs of everything else before you get to it. This new record, which I think is going to be called Bliss, is about love. And it is just about how good it is to be loved and how wonderful it is to be on the same page as someone. And that came about, those songs were written, within, I guess, maybe the last 7 months. So COVID for me, apart from the fact of not hugging my kids until yesterday when I had lunch with them, and not my daughter Maddie, I hadn't seen her face in over a year, till yesterday. Apart from stuff like that, I've made the most of it. I've painted, like that painting up there of the horse, so I mean, I have not suffered, and there are people in my life who have passed away, funny enough, not of COVID, and some with COVID, but John Prine that's horrible, a number of great artists. But then, loss is with us all the time. Death is just part of this beautiful life. But the next record, that'll be kickstarted, I think, in August or September, and the vinyl will have been ordered so that it shows up hopefully by Christmas. So, yeah, I'm busy.
I do want to talk a little bit about Open Heart. You mentioned the record Open Heart. As a phenomenal album, by the way.
Thank you.
I do some work with UTR Media, and
okay.
Yeah, and every year Dave has us. We go through our list of everything that's been released in the last year, and that was on my list for definitely one of the best albums of the year.
Thank you, Joe.
One of the tracks that I thought was one of the best songs, Requiem for a Dream. Man, what a song!
You're gonna grieve it for a long, long time. Your open heart was the scene of the crime. You keep asking the question, why? Baby, your guess is as good as mine. How do you know how to let go?
And the thing that I took away with that record was, I know that's coming from a deeply personal place, and obviously you couldn't have, in any way, none of us could have knew the year that was ahead. But man, that song was like an anthem for me last year. I lost a lot of people. Yeah, I lost a lot of people too, from COVID and
sorry,
and from other reasons. And man, what a beautiful record of grief and loss and pain and love, and there's so much going on there. Can you tell me a little bit about that album?
Well, first of all, I'm deeply touched by what you've said, and the thought that this song in particular would be reflective of that year is a really interesting and kind of wonderful perspective to get from you. When I wrote that record, and actually I need to put this on Bandcamp, but I probably need to do like a blow by blow, like as the record's playing. I need to do a narrative like I've done for Hornet's Nest and for Mercyland Volume 1, where you just hear me talking about the music as it goes by. But that song, Requiem for a Dream, the whole record, I started writing that record because, I don't know if you know anything about the Enneagram, but for those who do, my personality type is definitely inclined towards romanticism. And so I had lost someone in 2017. It was a tremendously difficult loss. It was a woman who was never going to marry me, who, there was some of this and there was a lot of this, and from the beginning. And so, we were involved for about 9 years. This is someone I met or started seeing about 4 years after my divorce. And I'm just going to give you a parenthesis here. For anybody who is like starting a new relationship, this is just free right now. But for someone starting a new relationship, it's like, what are the things that bother you about this person? What are the signals that you are receiving right now that you hope are going to change? Whatever those things are, they are not going to change. They are not going to go away. In a lot of ways, the relationship right now, in this moment of bliss, is maybe as good as it's going to be in terms of the things that you're questioning. And so, but I was naive and I was hungry for just a wonderful relationship. And so I kind of shrugged off the things like, I will never marry you. I just sort of thought, of course you will, and those things never happened. So by the time she was diagnosed with cancer 9 months before she actually was taken away by cancer, it was apparent that everything she said in the first week of dating her had been true, and so I wasn't allowed to talk about her illness. I wasn't allowed to share with a friend, hey, she's dying, I need your friendship. Versus I think most healthy people, when they're ill, they are going to say, do whatever you got to do. If you got to tell somebody, tell them, and I'm making this very long. I'm sorry. So during her exit, which was very much a gigantic FU to me, because I had finally just gotten worn out. There was a lot of unkindness, and I finally said, I love you, but I'm not doing this anymore. Anything you need, I'll give you, but I'm not, I can't do this thing anymore. Well, that turned into, he broke up with me because I have cancer, and I had an entire community hating me because of this myth. So I wound up writing what became Hornet's Nest. My most recent record, Hornet's Nest, was actually written before Open Heart. And I just did not even dare record it. It was such a heavy record. I just thought, I don't know what I'll do with it. Meanwhile, she dies. About 4 months later, someone's at my Christmas party, and I'm interested. Started investing ourselves in that, and I'm grateful for it. We kind of, we both needed someone in each other's lives saying, you're attractive, you're a good person, I'd like to spend time with you. And me being my personality type, I started just kind of writing these tunes, and I had an awareness that this was just going to be temporary. But of course, that's never your hope when you're enjoying someone. You're never thinking this is just temporary. Well, it's all temporary. By the time I recorded the record, the thing was over. I mean, it ended well, ended in friendship. Then I had this crew helping me put the record out. And it was a publicist named Jackie Marishka, and a little sort of record company type person named Stephanie, and who has a company called Soundly. And Stephanie's like younger than my daughter Maddie. She's maybe 26, and she said to me, "Hey, have you realized," when we were just talking about marketing the record, she said, "Have you realized that you wrote this record to your own heart?" And I'm like, "Not at all." And she was the one that pointed out to me, these are the songs of a grieving man. And I went back and I listened to the very song you're speaking of. Requiem for a Dream, very first song on the record. And that song is actually slower than what I would usually open a record with, by the way. But I knew it had to open. You're going to grieve it. Now, imagine me writing this to myself, which I was unaware of. You're going to grieve it for a long, long time. Your open heart was the scene of the crime. You keep asking the question, why? Baby, your guess is as good as mine. How do you know how to let go? And so I didn't even know I was writing anything poignant. I thought I was talking to someone about the demise of their situation, which of course I was. But anyway, it is an intriguing prospect that I might have written this to myself.
But it makes so much sense though, because when you look at your relationship with that person, the connection was built, that bridge was built on loss and grief.
Yeah, totally.
So, and it's a lot easier to say those things to somebody else than to say them to yourself sometimes, even if you need it.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful record. Open Heart. Anybody listening, definitely go check that one out. That's good stuff.
I really appreciate that. I do want to let you know. I don't know if your people know this, but I play a show 6:00 Central Time on Sunday evenings I do a Facebook show where I've been doing it over a year now, every night, every Sunday night. And so a lot of the new love songs, I've just been practicing them on there, and the response is really wonderful to that stuff, because we do want to hear about good happening. And, so a record like Open Heart, I mean, it's just sweet enough and positive enough that you stay with it. Plus it has, I think, probably the heaviest tune musically I've ever written is probably Monk. And I can't even believe I wrote that song, but I'm real proud of that, if we can even take credit for that kind of stuff. The new record that I'm working on, I'm just so happy about, because it's just happy. It's not happy in a lame, sappy way. It's happy in a super hopeful way, even an encouraging way. And then Hornet's Nest, the record I wrote before Open Heart, is intense, because I don't know about you, Joe. I know for most of us something's broken somewhere. Yeah. We have a friend we don't talk to anymore. We have a sibling we don't speak with anymore. We have someone who died and gave us the bird on their way out. And so that record tackles those relationships. And, 2 of those 10 songs are about my estranged relationship with my brother, whom I haven't spoken with in 8 years. I don't mind talking about it. It's kind of like, I do wonder if it'll ever get better. And probably if I keep writing songs about it, it probably won't. And then, of course, the 7 about this woman who passed away. And then 1 just totally made up. That's a duet with Cindy Morgan. That's really fun. But I love the Hornet's Nest record, because I feel like, and this is what I hated about Christian music, and why I'm glad I'm not involved in Christian music. You really couldn't talk about a reality of desperation, a reality of need, a reality of poverty. You really had to pretty much stay within the bounds of what I think is a fantasy of just how great life in God is. And it's kind of like, no, life in God is not, it might not be any greater than life not in God. It's a journey. And so to me, the new record is a real valid statement of loss, and it is redemptive. The last 2 songs on the record are grateful. The other ones are pretty much there's some tongue-in-cheek stuff. One of them is called "Mama Always Liked You Best," which is very funny. Although if it were written for me, I wouldn't think it was funny. But the guy who's making records right now, me, is not, I'm not wasting time now, so you can buy my records before Providence. They're very sweet. They're good records, largely co-written. If I did them within the 2000s, they're a lot of co-written songs. The new stuff is just written by me. It's my response to life. And yeah, I've never been happier in terms of creating. Even making a record like Hornet's Nest was a joy, even though it was like, holy cow, I hope people can handle it, But we'll see.
Last time we said hello, did either of us know it was goodbye? The things I wish I'd said still swirling in my head. Too late to try. There's something to be treasured. I'll look back and I'll take pleasure. But it's gonna take a while. So I keep my lights down low, 'cause last time we said hello was goodbye.
All right, man. This has been really fun.
Hey, thanks so much for doing this.
All right, Joe. Good to hear from you.
I'm hoping you hit that 20 grand.
Yep. Appreciate it, man. Blessings.
You too. Take care.
Take care.
We each apologized, tears flowing from our eyes, 'cause it was true. I'm going through the motions of moving on from my devotion, but it's gonna take a while. Baby, did you know, last time we said hello was goodbye.
So once again, thanks to Phil Madeira. You can check out philmadeira.net. Check out his band, Red Dirt Boys, Emmylou Harris's backing band. They have an Indiegogo campaign, so we definitely want to direct your way there in the final days of their campaign. You can check that out. They're doing a double album. But now we want to offer you an extended conversation with Jimmy Abegg and Ben Pearson with their memories about Rick Elias.
So we've got to go play. Well, we want to go play. We meet at Ben Pearson's house, and we rehearsed in the basement. And Ben's our new rhythm guitar player, and we're going to play a big Catholic youth event in New York City, and I think that's where we met Joe Cook. Is on the way there we played a gig up in,
it was like in Delaware or someplace.
Yeah, somewhere
Father
up.
Mike.
Yeah, and I think Joe Cook.
And then we played
his
another
wife,
one before that. Yeah.
maybe it was that one.
Yeah.
So we played a little tree of gigs on the way up and maybe nothing on the way back.
What was the name of the Catholic
event?
We played in that beautiful church in Manhattan.
Yeah.
The basement of that church in Manhattan.
I don't know the name of it.
I cannot remember that name now.
It was around the corner from Elaine's, I do remember that.
Yeah, we went to Elaine's after.
Yeah. Rick was the, I don't know, consummate professional for getting the band rehearsed and in tip-top shape for the next appearance. And I have a really great memory of Rick in the at the event. We couldn't quite get the monitors to work right, and over time you get this kind of built-in sense of if it's not working right, oh well.
Yeah.
Just get it so I can at least hear each other. But with Rick, it really wanted to be right.
Yeah, he wanted it to be right, and for some reason the monitors could not be any more terrible that night.
They couldn't have been worse.
And to the point where Rick took it personally.
Yeah.
And he was convinced that the sound engineer, front of house, had it in for him. I swear, he's got it. He hates me. He hates me. He's doing this deliberately. Does your monitor sound like this?
Oh man, what a case. So what's great is after the gig, and the gig was really a blast. I remember just a throng of people at the end. It was a
It was a
joyful.
high point. It was a beautiful.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah, man.
So then we
had a
packed
good
everything up, which is also a drag. But
and loading the U-Haul on the streets
Yeah.
of Manhattan is always,
Bummer.
always an experience. Yeah, you'll never forget.
But as it happens, we had a chance to walk around the corner, and I guess we were going to get a beer. We're waiting for the monks who had hosted it. We're gonna sleep at their abbey,
Monastery, yeah, the little abbey.
their little thing over in Bronx, maybe, or
I can't remember quite.
I think it was up.
It was north. Yeah, it was north. So yeah,
Straight up.
Yeah, straight up. So it was.
But so they said, "Well, go get a beer at Elaine's, and then when we're done, we'll come get you and go to the hotel or the sleeping area." And
the monastery.
Yeah, and we walk into that bar, and I guess it hadn't really occurred to me that was the Elaine's.
Yeah.
Woody Allen and a
Frequented.
yeah, I mean, just the whole backdrop of fame. And so we walk in, and it's me and Rick and Mark and Aaron and Ben and maybe Connolly. Yeah, Connolly.
Yeah, Connolly might have been there.
We always had a guy named Stephen Connolly would help us in the Northeast with gigs and help with sound and routing and relationships and cops if you needed them. Remember his brother? And
He was a fixer.
yeah, he's. What was Stephen Connolly? He's a fixer. So anyway, we walk in and hear this big table with a bunch of people sitting at it, and they're like, "Hey!" They're starting to shout at Rick and I, and
They were eyeing our whole group up for a while. And Elaine, she's a rather large woman, and she kind of commands space, mentally. She's a brilliant lady. And she was, I noticed her kind of eyeing the group up. And she's talking to a friend of hers that is sitting there, and she motions me to come over. And so I go over. And she goes, "Hey, honey, are you guys from Nashville?" And I go, "Yeah." And she hits her friend in the arm. She goes, "I told you." So she had us made, man.
She did. Are you guys rock stars?
She just saw Nashville, I guess, man. I guess we had a patina of Nashville over us. But yeah.
Fun memory. So then we go over to the monastery and ended up sharing. They make beer there, so we had to sample their beer, and we were all in the kitchen back then. Almost everybody smoked.
Yeah.
Aaron smoked a cigar.
Yeah.
You smoked a pipe.
Yeah.
Mark and I and Rick smoked cigarettes.
Drinking.
And the monks were all smoking.
And they were cooking food. It was
crazy, and it was like 4 a.m. Praise the Lord. Rick Elias, if you can hear us, we love you.
You know what's wild too? I remember being amazed that Ricky got up that same morning and went to mass, early mass.
Did he?
He did, yeah. Like,
he had a Catholic faith.
How did you do that? But that was a good.
What a trip!
Yeah, that playing with the Rags was probably. As far as musically, was a high point for me. It all came about when we were having a get together after Tommy Howard died at my house, and what I thought was going to be kind of our little gathering, about 8 to 10 of us, that we had when Rich passed away. At my place, we thought that's what we were doing, and what happened, the word got out. There was about 50 people at my house that night.
That was
at Tommy's wake, and we had a great wake for Tommy Howard that night. Yeah. And anyway, everybody was pretty lubricated, and that night we were pretty late. We were having smokes on the back porch, and the guys were talking about, hitting the road. There were some legs coming up that they needed to do, and I kind of just jokingly, I'd been playing in another band at the time, but that was dissolving, and I said, hey, you guys don't need a rhythm player, and I said it jokingly, and Rick was like, yeah, and I kind of left it there, that night, and haha, yeah, sure, and anyway, the next morning he calls, and he's like, you're serious, right? And I'm like, yeah, but are you sure? And so that's how it all started. And I always felt like the kid, that is the last to get picked in for football, for tag football. And Rick was the guy that picked me, and I did a lot for me. Yeah. I needed that at the time. And
that was great.
Yeah, playing with these guys was just an amazing thing. Having been behind the lens for so many years, and then having the opportunity to play was amazing. And like Jimmy said, I mean, Rick was just he was like the consummate pro. Guys, can we just be a little more professional here?
Yeah.
So, it was a beautiful thing to be around.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that the biggest thing that caught me by surprise was the day that Rick called. I was on my way to see my mom, and she was about a year out, or actually no, not a year out. She was just a couple months away from passing. And I was on my way to see my mom, and I get this call from Rick, and he's like, "Hey, Benny, hey, I need you to. Any chance you could come by? And I need to talk to you." And I went by that night, and of course, he said that he had been diagnosed, with cancer, and we talked, way into the night. Into the early morning, and it was just an amazing thing to be with somebody who had just heard, just found out that they had, cancer, and anyway, we agreed I'd come back the next night or a couple more nights after that, but I think it was the next night actually. I went back out, and he said, "Well, I've thought a lot about what we were talking about last night," and he said, "I want you to know that I know I need to make amends, and I got a list." And he just said, I just wanted you to know that I'm going to start working on this list. And it's like, holy shit, man. I'm just like, this is incredible. And he did have a list. And he started going through that list, making amends with people. And it just blew my mind. It's like it was, very cinematic in nature. I mean, it was epic. As far as this guy aggressively going after making things right with people.
Unbelievable.
And that's the big part of it for me, that the big takeaway for me was, seeing that transformation, of desire to make things, to be at peace with everybody that, he felt that he was at odds with, and he did it, and it was beautiful to behold.
Shocking, really, to be yeah, boy, that's a long one. that for many years, I called Rick every month to just check in, and felt like we had the kind of relationship that asked for some kind of maintenance, even though I knew something wasn't quite right, not sure what.
Yeah.
And he just never picked up or called, you know.
Yeah.
But that's okay, because I felt like
Yeah.
I'm doing my part to keep the tree growing somehow. And that time period you're talking about, finally, I mean, after more than 10 years of,
You guys, you were on that list.
yeah. Hey, I can't even say what he said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Essentially, this is the Doombah that has been harassing you for years.
Yeah.
I just want you to know I'm really, really sorry. And I wish we had the time to get back to the beginning where it was all not that. I don't know why he felt like it would be easy for him, because I could hear how it wasn't,
Yeah.
because the other Rick still kind of owns the joint,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yet that willful desire to redeem, and our relationship wasn't that broken.
No.
It was just sort of dented.
Yeah. Yeah.
And unlike a
Well,
mutual
making
friend
of
of
the
ours.
Jesus record and the whole aftermath of
Yeah.
after Mullins passed away.
Yeah, I mean,
that
we
was
had,
those were rough years.
those
man.
were hard to carry, and he
was-
took it personally,
Yeah.
and he felt like he was a horrible imposter, and he lived in shame for all sorts of unknown reasons. But that side of him drew lines. On more than one occasion, I remember him saying how he had, jettisoned
Yeah. So and so
or whatever, and
Yeah.
and one of our mutual friends was one of the early Jettisons, and to watch that relationship come back and bloom.
Shocking. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it is the emblematic result of redemptive grace
Yeah.
and the power of forgiveness
Yeah.
in the world.
Seeing that play out in reality.
And the main actor in the play.
Yeah.
There were no what do you call that? What do you call them? Support. There were no supporting actors or actresses.
Right, yeah.
It was a
Yeah.
whirlwind that was unbelievably paradoxical, because of the star of the show was Rick Elias.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. The irony to me is just
Yeah.
certain. It's Christ-like.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, what? He's
Yeah.
walking
Yeah.
on water.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's so
Yeah.
miraculous.
Yeah.
This person
Yeah.
who is
Yeah.
being repossessed
Yeah.
by this
Yeah.
capacity for love.
Yeah.
And
having
care.
just done the Job album.
Yeah.
I mean, all those years culminating in the Job, he does that project,
Yeah.
the Job project. And then this happens.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like, you hear about it from the pulpit
Yeah.
all your life, and you
Yeah.
rarely see it.
You don't get to see it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I see shit more now that I'm blind.
Yeah.
And that tells you something. It's
Sure,
that truth is in the atmosphere, and the beautiful thing about Rick, that I noticed when I first met him is just his charisma and how he seemed connected to a different pulse
Yeah.
that I guess was really appealing to a certain gob of people. He had this savoir-faire and freewheeling. He just is a classic. Shit.
Yeah.
Oh,
He's
man.
like the missing member of the Rat Pack in a different time space. He was born into the wrong time space. He should have been running with those guys.
He was that.
He was that guy.
He was that schmaltzy too. He was so funny. He didn't like sharing the limelight. The funniest part about, and I think this was true for all of the rags, that you had to face the boss, i.e. Rich Mullins. And that was a paradox too, because he intentionally had artists who were sort of relegated to the fringes, but had an artistic arc, were the guys that he wanted in his band. And at the same time, the music business is full of self doubt, and to overcome that, self-worth. So there's often lots of ego floating around, either because of insecurity or because of superiority. And you kind of measure. One of the great things about Rick that I also loved was his ability to, in a way, see the way I saw, where he would read a situation. And he had a lot of street smarts, unlike a lot of folks who come up in a more, docile upbringing. He was rough around the edges, man. He had street smarts and could really find his way through a crowd. Not to mention he was 6'4", and
that helped.
Some of that was, I'm sure, very useful. But the funny turn in a person's life that makes them both yin and yang, lovable and just toxic. It's like both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And the poetry and the music and the delivery holds up.
Yeah.
It's
totally.
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he loved things to be really tight and right, but with just enough falling off the tracks.
Yeah, some rough.
When it was starting to sound like the Stones, or it was fun. It was really fun. It's just funny. You get buried in the clothes you die in, I guess. So, happy birthday, Rick.
Happy birthday, Rick.
Well, thanks so much for listening with us today. Again, check out Phil Madeira's music, his Indiegogo campaign with the Red Dirt Boys. In coming months, we are pleased to keep our focus on Rick Elias' music, and our episode will be an in-depth look, or at least an in-depth conversation about his first solo record, Rick Elias and the Confessions. Anything to say about that, Joe?
Yeah, just that I'm really looking forward to really digging into that record with you and having a good discussion. Also, I think, we may have some additional bonus episodes coming up in the next month or two. So keep an eye out for that. If people haven't, they should subscribe to this podcast. They can follow us on Facebook. Are we on Twitter? We're on Twitter.
No, I don't think we are. I'm on Twitter, and I don't think we have a
follow Chris on Twitter.
Post-consumer Chris. That's my Twitter handle. There you go. We're trying to find the people that would be interested in these stories that we're telling, and we, as you can tell, we're not specifically focused on Mullins' music at the moment, and instead we're telling the stories that are surrounding him, and that's where Phil Madeira comes in today, and
we're in the peripheral.
We're in the peripheral. Oh, this is where we're in the Mullins verse.
Yes. We're deep in the Mullins verse.
Yeah. We're just trying to tell the full story as best as we know how. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next month on Between the Songs.